Hello, my name is Stephanie, and today I'll be presenting my speech, which is called How a Piece of You Can Save a Life. And I know what you're thinking, either literally or figuratively. I mean literally at this case. I'll be talking, if you guessed it, about being an organ donor, how an organ donation works. And throughout this speech, I will be explaining what is organ donation, how it works, the importance of it, and where you can sign up to if you do decide to become one, or if you already are good for you. So let's get on with the next slide. What is organ donation? Organ donation is basically a voluntary act of one that they will be donating their healthy organs or tissues to another person in need of a transplant. That will be saving their lives if you were able to. One misconception that many people do have is that you do have to be deceased for you to be a donor or an organ donor, which is not the case. Depending on the organ that you are trying to donate, you can still be alive while being a donor still, but you can give, of course, certain organs. You can't give a complete organ. You can't give partial organs, which I will get to in the next slide of how it works. So first and foremost, I would like to say how it's done. It is through a non-profit organization called UNOS, which stands for the United Network for Organ Sharing. They are typically the ones that are doing the donations, who decide who gets the donor, who gets the organ being donated. Like I said before, you could either be a living donation or a deceased donation, depending, of either or. But how it works, basically. How does UNOS decide who gets what? And how do they know the urgency? Well, UNOS does have a computer system called UNIT. UNIT will have the information of the recipient and of the organ donor. Of course, once the information is put in of the donor to see who is eligible or who is more compatible with the organ being donated, that's how it will start. First, of course, it will take off all of the people who are incompatible. It will, of course, take in consideration the distance of the candidate, the preservation of the organ, because it will have to travel certain distance depending on where the recipient, the candidate, is. I will take into consideration the urgency of this person. It will also take into consideration the likely of survival if they do receive this transplant. That, as unfortunate as it is to hear, they will always go to the person who is the most urgent and the most likely to survive. Let's say, for example, if one person not only needs a kidney transplant, but they need a heart transplant, that's two organs that they are needed. Sometimes that person who is donating the liver can be a match as well. It just depends, of course, of the person's health, of the donor's health, of the sizing and the blood type. Again, same goes with the liver organ. It just all depends. But let's say there's two people that need it, but one person needs multiple different transplants. It will always go to the person, most likely, generally, it will go to the person who just needs that one transplant, because they're most likely to survive, to have their longevity is more higher than that person who needs multiple transplants. And like I said before, which I would like to say of which organs can be partially donated while you're still alive, those are, you could survive in one kidney, so you could donate a kidney, you could donate part of a lung, part of a liver, part of the pancreas, and part of the intestines. Of course, all depending on what is needed for that recipient. As well as you could donate bone marrow, blood vessels, and stem cells. All this, typically, what happens is people who are living donors, they are typically giving it to a relative, a close friend or family that they might know. It can be anonymous as well, a complete stranger. Like I said, it just depends on the circumstance of how you got the knowledge of who might needed it, or if you just saw it on the site and you're willing to donate or be tested to see if you're a match. One thing that many people as well are concerned about is the cost. What does it cost me if I would like to be an organ donor? Start with nothing. All charges relative related to the donation process is billed to the organ or eye or tissue recovery agency, or is typically covered by the insurance of the recipient, as well, or another forms of financial needs that they are getting aid from, depending on them. Another thing that many people are concerned about is their identity being released, or personal information that is all kept to oneself, that is kept confidentially between the hospitals and the doctors. They cannot just give it freely. The only information that will be exchanged between the donor family and the recipient is the age, gender, and the state of residence of either or. The recipient may be told the circumstances of the death that how they're receiving that organ, how did they pass away. The donor family may be informed of the recipient of how they're performing, the feedback of how they're doing, maybe just their overall health generally, not their name of anything, but just did they make it out, did what their loved one did help give them more time. Now that you know the works of it, let's say, why should you become one? I'm gonna give you another logistical fact. This is right here, if you could see, this is a bar graph of how many people are on the waiting list. This is overall all the types of organs, tissues that they might need. Over 100,000 people are on the waiting list. Of all these people, approximately 8,000 people die waiting on that list each year, just waiting, because who knows how long they've been on that list, who knows how urgency there is compared to others. Like I said, it takes so much into consideration. Another fact that you should know is that it's like, how many people can you help? One tissue donor though, this is, can enhance 75 lives or save them, depending again of the condition of that recipient. Okay, 75 lives, that's from one person. If they decided to be an organ donor, one person, that's a match for 75 lives. One person, they could donate completely, or the organs, our heart. Of course, you unfortunately have to be deceased for that. Your heart, parts of your lungs, or full lungs, depending again on the condition of the recipient, liver, pancreas, to kidneys. It could do so much, just one person. So much that many people don't realize, because there's so much diversity on the list and all over the world, that the more people who get to do it, the more people that could get a chance to just live a little longer. Most people, they say about their faith that their faith might reject them if they end up, donating. But again, I don't know every religion, how they work. But from what I gather in my research, most major faiths accept organ donations. This includes Catholicism, Buddhism, most branches of Judaism, and most Protestant faiths, from what I gathered. So these religions typically view organ donation as an act of charity. They see it as an act of being human, of doing something good, and it is, because you are saving a life. You're giving somebody else time that is being taken away from them, from something that is out of their control. And I did find a quote, though, that I really liked. It's called, "Next to creating a life, the finest thing a man can do is save one," said by Abraham Lincoln, which is completely true. How I read it, how I interpreted myself, is that you don't need to be a medical professional. You don't need to be a nurse, a doctor, a surgeon. You don't need to be in the ER room, in the surgical room, to save that life. You could help in so many different ways, not just being an organ donor, which is what I'm talking about, but there's different ways that you could save other people's life. But being an organ donor is one that you can, like I said, give a piece of yourself to somebody else that's giving them time. You could give somebody time to see their daughter walk down the aisle, to see the child graduate from middle school, high school, the university, getting their first car. You could be the reason somebody gets to see again, to see for the first time their child's face, to see their first time seeing their mother's face. You could be the reason somebody doesn't have to medically depend on a certain a certain injection, a certain procedure each day of their lives so constantly that they don't, you could be the reason somebody doesn't have to spend the rest of their lives in a hospital. You could be the reason that they get to do things that they never got to do, something that you were able to do or not, depending how early you unfortunately passed away. But yes, this is the importance of organ donation. You will be saving lives. You will be saving so many. You'll be giving time, the time that was unfortunately taken away from oneself. You'll be giving that time to many other people to maybe get to do things they never got to do because of the health condition that they have themselves. So overall, I would just like to say, I hope you decide to become an organ donor. If you are already, thank God. You are doing some good that you don't know yet, that you of course haven't done. If you have or donated some part of organs like the ones I mentioned, good for you. That is, you're doing so good already. But besides that, if you do decide to be an organ donor, the way you could do it is you would have to go to the DMV, unfortunately. And we know that not all of us like going, none of us like going to the DMV. But if you do not want to go there, you can as well do it online through the National Donor Registry. That's one way to do it as well. But I would like to inform that if you do decide to be an organ donor, always let your family members know, your close loved ones, your next of kin, that you are becoming an organ donor, because when the time does come, they are feeling emotional. They're like, you are taking another part of my child or lover or whatever you are to that person. You're taking more away from me that was already taken from me, which is very hard. So if you could talk to your loved ones ahead of time of your decision of being an organ donor, would be great. It will cause less stress on them when they're already going through such a tragic time, losing somebody they love. But if you could talk to them ahead of time, see your way of it, see why you're doing it, see the importance of it, then it'll be so much, it'll just be maybe just slightly easier for them to be able to process the fact, maybe get some joy out of, to get basically joy out of such a tragic time, that you might be gone, but you are giving somebody else time with their loved ones that they no longer have with you. So hopefully you enjoyed my speech, and hopefully you got information and decide to be an organ donor, or at least I influence a little bit your thoughts on it. Thank you.